It's Weather Wagers, and I am Brett Thacker. He is Dan Tomaso,
Hello.
and we are excited to be with you. You know, we just want to say thank you for listening, for watching. We've noticed an uptick in our listeners on our podcast apps, and we thank you for that. You can
Certainly
watch us
do.
on YouTube, abc27.com, wherever you get those podcasts, especially our friends at Apple, Amazon, Spotify. We are everywhere.
We certainly try to be, and hopefully, whatever your favorite platform is, you can find us. And again, just look under Weather Wagers. You can also search our name, Google. It all works. You can find us. And if you can't, email us, and we'll send you a link.
We are excited about it, and we hope you'll join us each and every week. So it's kind of a weird time of year, Dan. As we look ahead, we are getting ready for actual baseball. We've had some fake baseball. We had a nice chat last week about some of the rules changes, and when we start to kick off the MLB season, we will be here talking about the weather and any rain delays or snow delays that we may face. But this episode is going to be all about I think, dare I say, our favorite sport, college football.
Well, and the dynamics thereof, because that is something that I think is going to encapsulate the sports world for months to come. And, you know, we'll talk about all the implications here coming up, but it is a wild time to be in college football, whether it's commissioners, whether it's on the TV side, whether it's to be an AD, whether it's to be a university president. I think everyone's trying to figure out, what is this landscape now?
Well, there's lots to talk about on the field. We've had a couple of guests here over the last couple of weeks. This week you're stuck with just us two yahoos prattling on. But I do think, though, that there's lots to talk about off the field. And speaking of commissioners, does the Big Ten have one yet?
Not that I have heard. Maybe they feel like the hard work's been done, that they can kind of take their sweet old time. Now, it is interesting they don't have someone in charge going into March Madness, because March Madness is a huge moneymaker for every conference.
Right. That is a sport that we follow from the side. Penn State has a shot to be in the tournament.
They do.
And we may talk a little bit about the betting side of that as we get closer to the tournament. But that's an indoor sport, so we don't typically follow it as much as others. But I will tell you, it is interesting. I think the Big Ten is okay. They have a TV deal locked up.
They certainly do.
USC, UCLA, they do need to transition them in a year. I would imagine an announcement will be coming this summer at some point.
I would certainly think so.
And I think one of the leading candidates is Jim Phillips from the ACC.
Which would be very interesting.
Yeah, he's the ACC commissioner. He's from Northwestern. I think he was the AD there. And, he's had some, there's some mixed feelings in the ACC about him. He came into a TV deal that isn't very good because it was signed. It's through 2036. And what's interesting here is we've talked about the Pac-12 TV rights. They don't have a deal yet.
They still don't have a deal. I was just searching the internet before we came on here to see if there's been any developments, and it's been pretty silent, at least out to the public.
If they can get a package on ESPN, I think that would be a win for them.
Yes.
If they end up on Amazon or Apple or a combination of all those three, that's probably a win. If they just end up on Apple TV, I think that's a problem. And I think you may see some schools want to split.
Well, you just mentioned getting a Big Ten commissioner. It could be very important if there are now more interested schools jumping off the Pac-12 ship.
I mean, you said there's nothing new today. As we sit here and record this, where are we at? I mean, those are the interested parties. ESPN is waning interest, but they're still at the table. Amazon, Apple. I have not heard anybody else.
I have not heard anybody else either. I mean, it's somewhat concerning that ESPN is not fully involved, but I have to think some of that has to do with the lower ratings with those games at night.
Well, but you're right. Actually, I am going to argue that a little bit. I don't think you're totally wrong, but I think there are way more issues at play than ratings. And by the way, the Pac-12 After Dark ratings do pretty well because there is no other game on at that late night time slot. And if you're in college or you're up late on a Saturday night and you're a college football fanatic, that's where it's at. Pac-12 After Dark. The ratings have been okay. They usually can get about 1 million viewers or so, which in that time slot is pretty good. The issue is, though, Dan, it's money. It's dollars and cents. Right. And we've seen Disney stocks take a hit within the last year, and they brought Bob Iger back. And he's saying he wants to be fiscally conservative. They're not going to be spending a lot of big money. They also have to think about other things. The Pac-12 is just not high on the totem pole for them. Because keep in mind, they passed on the Big Ten.
Right. Well,
and those ratings are great.
Can we at least surmise again, this is probably taking a little bit of a leap, but this deal is not going to be as big as what the Big Ten schools are getting or what the SEC is getting. The money's just not out there.
No, it's not going to be close. I'm just saying from an ESPN perspective, if they have a West Coast game at 10:30, the ratings will be good enough to justify it. To your point, though, they lost their two biggest brands. The games are not going to be as helmet worthy as they are in the Big Ten or the SEC. But to me, the issue comes down to ESPN,
right?
Because as I was saying, Bob Iger's not spending the money. Didn't spend the money with the Big Ten. They have to think about the fact that the NBA rights are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I think they want to be in business with the NBA.
Yeah, the ratings are good,
and the NBA may diversify and take a package to streaming. They have other rights and other things that they are interested in and want to invest in. And quite frankly, too, they want to be looking at an over-the-top service within the next few years. There's a lot of ESPN is going on under that Disney umbrella.
Sure.
And the Pac-12 right now is just simply not a huge concern if they lose it.
Well, and I have to say, it's as a college football fan, without those two marquee brands, unless you're excited about Oregon State, which I'd watch an Oregon State game, Oregon, if somehow they survive in the conference. What else is there? I mean, Washington, I guess.
You know what ratings? This was surprising to me, but the Athletic did a ranking of some of the higher-rated games. I think they were in the top 10, actually. Washington State, surprisingly, did very well. In Pullman. Maybe that's all they have there. But they were pulling in around 1 million eyeballs on average. So, but, I mean, listen. You're not wrong. On the whole, the conference is taking a hit. Stanford's not what it used to be.
Sure. I didn't even say them because I don't even think about them as a football school right now.
Not right now. They kind of ran themselves into the ground. David Shaw left. He resigned. Yep. And so, listen, I think the Pac-12 TV deal is going to be the next domino to fall. They need, in my opinion, if they want to survive as a league, the bottom line is they need ESPN. They have to do better than just a deal with Apple.
Do you find it interesting that you don't hear NBC at all? I know they took a hit, but still.
NBC is happy, and from what I'm hearing, they are happy with their Notre Dame Big Ten combo. That is going to start this fall, by the way.
Yep. So Big Ten will be spread across NBC,
right?
CBS at some point.
Yep. They're going to have some games next year. CBS they showed some interest here, but I just don't think it was they weren't willing to invest with the brands and for what they were going to get back in terms of ratings. The 3:30 window is going to switch to the Big Ten next year. They're going to have some doubleheaders this year. They still have one more year of the SEC 3:30 window. Those ratings are going to be big for CBS. Why put on an Arizona State, Stanford game?
I agree.
I mean, who cares?
I mean, it could be like March Madness where you see some games on CBS, you see some games on CBS Sports or True TV or TNT, TBS. I mean, that's the other thing. How does cable stay alive in all this? Could a TNT, a TBS be a factor here at some point?
I haven't seen Turner wanting to. And by the way, I'm sure they want to stay. They have NBA. The NBA is the next pro league coming up, and they want to stay hot with them. And that they've been with Turner since I've been a kid.
Yes.
So it's a long deal. So there's no great answers for the Pac-12. Now, the interesting thing is the other league that's in a bit of peril is the ACC.
Correct.
And one of the reasons for that, and this is all coming out, we know that they are locked into a deal with ESPN and the ACC network, which is run by ESPN through 2036.
It's a long time.
Now, one of the best things Jim Delaney did before he retired is he signed the Big Ten to a TV deal that was a short-term deal. I think it was a 6-year deal.
Yep.
So then Kevin Warren comes in, signs the Big Ten to a 7-year deal with these major networks for buco bucks. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, in the course of all this time, the ACC hasn't been back to the negotiating table. So they got ESPN to run their network for them. But in the meantime, they're not going to be able to renegotiate these TV rights. And I don't know if you saw this. There was a story last week that came out about how the suits, for lack of a better term, but the trustees, the board at Florida State, they were being shown in a meeting the revenue that they were bringing in compared to those in the SEC and the Big Ten. Projected out over the next 5 years. Dan, it's not close.
Not competitive.
They are not going to be able to compete at the level that Florida State wants to compete at by staying in that league. Now, here's the other problem. They have a grant of rights through 2036. And I think a lot of people are under the misconception that they can say, okay, we'll pay the whatever. It's way too much money. They're locked. They're locked in. One of the things they've been talking about is perhaps unequally distributing the money so that teams like Clemson and Florida State get a bigger piece of the pie. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, something's going to have to give because when you lock yourself up to a deal that's running through 2036, you think stability. But the problem is the sport itself has changed so much just in 2-3 years' time. And now places like Penn State are going to get a huge check starting next year. Places like Clemson, Florida State will not even come close to that kind of money. And so this run that Clemson has had could stop. Does Dabo want to stick around for that? I mean, there's a lot of questions that start to come up. And, maybe Dion saw some of that too coming, that maybe Florida State couldn't be competitive. Maybe that's why he decided, I'll take this Colorado job while it's open. There's just so much there. And so,
but again, is Colorado going to be around with the Pac-12?
By the way, I did want to mention there were some reports last night. Now, I can't substantiate this, but there were reports last night and yesterday that Colorado's Board of Regents was meeting about this potential Pac-12 problem.
I saw that too. There are people that run these universities that are getting very antsy. Now, one of the solutions.
So you asked me about the unequal distribution. I don't see how that's feasible. I just don't. How could you, as another like Wake Forest type or NC State, be happy with that?
I don't think there's any way.
Virginia's a decent program.
I don't think there's any way that the league could survive that.
Correct.
I just don't. Vanderbilt gets the same amount of money as Alabama.
And that makes sense.
Yeah, they're never going to be Alabama, and they're never going to pull in the eyeballs that Alabama does. But you know what? It makes sense. They're in that league.
Well, and it helps all the other sports, and that's what people forget. Yes, we're talking about football, but football brings in the revenue that helps support every other sport.
And some university causes too. So I don't think it's feasible. But, and this is where I will point out, you shared with me a tweet yesterday from Stuart Mandel.
Yes, and he's about as dialed in as anyone on this whole thing.
Well, sure. Yeah, he's the college football editor for The Athletic. And this may sound crazy, but what did he tweet out? Do you have it?
Yeah, he said, and I made a joke to you, so I'll get to the joke in a second. But he came out and said...
And this is what's interesting because you want to talk about, I will, as you're finding that.
Let me scroll past some Iowa news first. But it says,
yeah,
interesting idea.
John Skipper, right?
Yeah,
it was John Skipper?
John Skipper. Now, where did it go? I have his tweets up.
You try to find that because I wanted to point out, though, that you were talking about stability with the ACC. And when you sign a long-term deal, you are 100% correct in the fact that it sounds good, right? It sounds stable.
Well,
but the problem is you're missing out on money if you make a long-term deal, depending on the market.
Correct. So Stuart Mandel, this is his quote, former ESPN president John Skipper, who negotiated the ACC's infamous 20-year deal, says the league should address its revenue problem by merging with the Pac-12. So this is someone familiar with the deal, familiar with how things work in the ACC, and he's basically saying, now's the time. You got to do something.
I'm not sure how relevant John Skipper is right now. He's always somebody that's going to be relevant. He had a long reign at ESPN. But it makes sense in the fact that what did the Big Ten do? It became a national league.
Correct.
And if you take those 10 schools in the Pac-12 and the ACC and have more of a national brand, that's what the Big 12 did as well.
Right.
I think all of a sudden then you have essentially 4 power conferences that could survive. The Big Ten and the SEC are the behemoths, right? But if you now have an expanded Big 12, okay, which we do have when those 4 other schools, Cincinnati, BYU, SMU, and there was one more I think came over.
Yeah, no. Now you're asking.
Yeah, what was it? But anyway, UCF.
Yes, I was going to say Southern Florida. I'm like, that's the wrong school.
Nope, UCF Gus, the Gus bus. But listen, those conferences can probably survive. I mean, the Big 12 was able to get a TV deal done before the Pac-12. What does that tell you?
Well, and what I think is interesting about this concept is that because the ACCRA is working with ESPN, would this then help the Pac-12 to stay on ESPN? I think that would be, they'd have to work out something.
Sure.
But this could be the best of both worlds where you pull in Pac-12 teams, get some of that notoriety, up the
you're
brand.
coast to coast.
You're coast to coast.
You got the Atlantic coast, you got the Pacific coast. You could do the Coastal Conference or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, I think the problem is the two biggest brands currently on the ACC side are Florida State and Clemson. Is anyone better than them in the Pac-12? I mean, is there much competition coming into the league?
I would say Oregon is right there.
Okay.
Other than that, probably not.
Right. So that's, I think from a competition standpoint, there would be some concerns.
Maybe, but I think when you start to pair them up, you've got your Oregons, your Florida States, your Clemsons at the higher end of things, maybe in North Carolina, and then you've got your Washington State, North
Sure.
Carolina States, Virginia. I mean, it may be.
They're all kind of comparable.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Big 12. There would be some really good games.
And how could we forget our friends with Pitt?
Right. Well,
and
I try not to think about Pitt.
But they're always there. They're always competitive. It seems like.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you call 7-5 competitive, sure. But listen, I think it would be an entertaining conference. I would watch Pitt play Stanford. I would watch North Carolina State play Arizona State.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
we're college football junkies. I don't think it's a bad idea. I just don't know if it's feasible.
Well, yeah, the logistics I think would be extremely difficult. I mean, travel and getting a full squad out to the West Coast multiple times a year.
Yeah,
you'd have to have a really big revenue.
But you could almost do two divisions then, your West Coast and your East Coast. So there would be. I mean, because again, it's entirely possible. We're going to be going out to the West Coast
Right.
as Big Ten folks. So.
Well, and that's, again, all this is assuming the Pac-12 stays as is. Again, if there's schools like Colorado concerned, if there's Oregon, if there's Washington, I mean,
where are they going to go? Are they going to?
The Big Ten could ultimately get bigger. The Big 12 could ultimately get bigger too, and that's still on the table.
Anything goes, and the sport has changed so much within the last 5 years. It makes your head spin. I want to change gears now. This is the college football hour, though, with Brett and Dan this week. You said you had some Iowa news. Is that worth sharing?
Yeah,
because there was some other news I wanted to talk about concerning Iowa. But what are you sniffing out here? And cite your source. I want to make sure it's a good source.
So Iowa, this is Stuart Mandel again, reached a $4.175 million settlement in a suit over racial discrimination allegations under Kirk Ferentz. The big catch, the state auditor who must approve it wants Gary Barta out.
The AD. Wow, he's the AD.
And he's the one that has supported Ferentz and Ferentz's son, who we'll get into in a little bit. This could be a major shakeup. I mean, not to draw too many comparisons, but we have seen what happens when the states get involved with college football programs.
Yeah.
The upheaval can be large.
Well, it can, and there's many facts surrounding that case that I don't have all of the info,
No,
but I do know that upset a
tidbit.
lot of people at the time. Kirk Ferentz survived it, got through it. From what we can tell, his players love him.
But it's still ongoing.
But it's
and
still
That's
ongoing.
the problem with these situations is that it can
Yeah.
be years
Yeah.
before everything comes out. And, it's a program right now that's struggling to maintain its national branding.
Correct. And along with that, part of the reason for that, not only did they have to go through that, they had to go through a season where everybody and their brother made fun of their offense. However, I thought that perhaps Kirk Ferentz was going to do what Nick Saban did with Pete Golding
Yes.
and with help me out here, the OC at Alabama last year.
Bill
Bill
O'Brien,
O'Brien.
yeah.
Yeah, he was going to, drop him off at the firehouse, leave him on the doorstep, and somebody would come along and pick him up, and maybe he could go to the NFL and be an O-line coach or a tight end coach.
Something.
But
Soft landing spot somewhere.
it's harder to leave your own flesh and blood like that. So Kirk Ferentz brings back his son
He does.
for more punishment, more gluttony for the Iowa fan base. However, talk to me about the terms of this deal, because this is what's fascinating, and this is going to be, at least in my opinion, kind of fun to keep track of this year. What do we got?
Well, again, you mentioned it's become a joke in college football because, again, people don't understand in 2023 how you could possibly run out this offense one more time. So this is the contract situation.
And by the way, and fill seats.
And fill seats. And they do. I mean, they sell
they
out.
do.
And it's a raucous environment. We know that. So the new contract, get this, it's a cool $850,000. So not a bad starting point.
Less than last year, though.
But here's the catch. It is less than last year. It's $40,000 in a reduction. So for their pathetic offense, especially the first half of the year, got a little demotion there. But here's the trick.
He can earn it back.
He can earn it back.
Ow.
And the stipulations are not that difficult. If you follow college football, you know that there's at least 3, possibly 4 games a year that you can mark in as a win for pretty much every program.
Okay, so what's in his clause here? What does his clause say?
They need to win 7 games. I just said you normally get about 3 to 4 as gimmies.
Yeah. But I also, now wait a minute. I thought this is actually, though, to keep his job.
But also earn the money back.
I see. But if he doesn't do this, he could be fired.
He could be. He could be. But again, I'm not holding my breath on that. He could win 7 games, score an average of 25 points, make that money back, keep his job. Now, here's the funny part about the 25 points. And again, that's a low total when you think about things. 85 teams in 22 scored 25 points on average.
Did you look that up?
I did.
What else do we have on the screen there?
And Brian Ferentz himself, since 2017, has scored this average number of points per year. So,
Really? Even last year?
yes, because of the second half of the season.
Let me ask you this. If the defense scores a touchdown, he gets
It
credit
counts.
for that, right?
It counts. And that was the point of the article, that it
So
could
if
be
Phil
specialty.
Parker's defense scores a touchdown, Brian Ferentz could get $50K thanks to Phil
if there's
Parker.
if there's a punt return for a touchdown, if there's an interception for a touchdown, sure, it all counts.
Okay. So that's 13 games times.
So basically, let's face it here.
Yeah. Hold on a second.
This is all just-
I want to do some more math here. 13 times 25. That's 325.
Yeah,
So we got to start the countdown.
yeah, I'm ready. But here's my whole thing with this.
Please.
Clearly, this was supposed to be punitive, mostly because the fans have been barking. I don't think Iowa has any interest in changing things because they win, they make money. It's all good. I think it goes back to the James Franklin quote. Do you want to be good? Do you want to be great? Or do you want to be elite? And I think they're okay with being good/great, but not at that elite level.
Can you imagine, though, being an Iowa fan and watching that trot out every game and just knowing that if your offense, listen, Iowa's offense doesn't even need to be elite. They
No.
need to have a pulse and they need to be competent. Their defense, I'm going to argue right now, is elite. At least could potentially win the Big Ten championship. If you think about it this way, the playoff is expanding to 12 teams.
Yes.
Iowa's defense, I'm going to make an argument, is good enough to make a run in a playoff against anybody.
Correct.
The defense.
Imagine if
the
they played
defense.
in the Big 12.
Yeah,
It would be a totally different situation. They would probably be at the top of the league.
right. But I'm telling you, I think they could even go again. Their defense now
Mm-hmm.
could go against SEC teams and not blink.
Correct.
The problem is, how frustrating is that if you're an Iowa fan? And by the way, how frustrating is that? Can you imagine being Phil Parker
No.
and
Where you-
watching the other side of the ball?
Now I'm assuming he probably gets paid a little more than this $850,000. He's a valuable coach.
Well, he's older and he's been there a while. But I mean, that would make you sick.
It would. It would be extremely frustrating no matter how you look at it.
So but it's also nepotism at its highest level, which we all, by the way, we've also lived through.
As Penn Staters, we know what that's like. Again, is this a joke? Is this for real?
I think it's real and
It-
it's in the contract.
It's public. They made it public, and to me, it's just you're asking for insult.
No. What you're asking for is you're asking people to count to 325.
Right. Now,
And if they hit 324, he's got to go.
right now, I think there could be more in the background here. Obviously, with that news I just presented you, that perhaps Kirk Ferentz does take the fall for this if there's a new athletic director involved in the mix. So maybe all this is
all this is a moot point.
Yeah.
I mean, if Kirk Ferentz is gone, he's gone.
Right.
Nobody's keeping him
Correct.
around. All right. We wanted to do a fun thing now and take a look. I said, go find somebody. We'll give them a shout out, give them credit here. There's a lot of way too early top 25. So one of the preeminent folks that works at ESPN is Mark Schleybaugh. So this is his. It's one of many.
And speaking of Iowa,
Yeah. By the way, listen, a lot of these look the same, but shout out to Mark Schleybaugh. We wanted to just use this as a conversation
Yes.
piece. This is his top 25, way too early top 25. So read him out there.
well, starting at the bottom, number 25, Iowa. One of our favorite programs on this show, James Madison at 24, which
May
I
have,
can't argue with.
May have put a few bucks in our pocket last
Yeah, that's
year.
right. UTSA, another squad of ours that we followed a lot. Poor Mac.
Mac, he's still there, though.
Yep, coming in at 21. I think they're a little better than that. But this is where I think it gets interesting.
Yes.
20, Ole Miss not giving Lane much of a chance here to pick up ground.
Well, but he's another one that I think he has used the transfer portal well. But can I throw out a comparison here?
Sure.
Lane Kiffin and Mel Tucker.
Wow.
Because Mel Tucker had that 10-2 year.
Yep.
Last year he flopped. Lane Kiffin starts out hot, kind of flops down the stretch. I mean, I wasn't really impressed with anything he did last year. Now he brings in Pete Golding.
Yes.
Nick Saban's, left on the doorstep D coordinator, and let's see what happens here.
It could be an interesting season for them.
Yeah, because listen, Lane is a good coach, but he's also fighting the fact that you're not going to get the type of recruits on the Grove
Correct.
that you get at some of these other schools. And how
Correct.
about Willie Fritz here?
Yeah, I mean, Tulane showing up again. I mean, that's pretty big for them to be a preseason above Ole Miss.
Well, the last thing we remember about them is beating USC, so I think they've earned it.
Yes, they have a pretty solid program. Kansas State will be back for more action, and Oregon State kind of in that same realm.
Better than people thought last year.
Better than people thought. What I think is extremely disappointing is the next two. Clemson. Is the patience going to wear thin on Dabo here soon?
Listen, what Dabo needs is a quarterback. And his problems are solved.
Right.
He didn't have one with DJ. He waited too long to put in the other kid.
And he might not be the answer either.
Well,
There's
he
some
might
pundits
not
that,
be.
Think that could be problematic.
But Dabo has not been kind to the transfers, so we'll see. They started to figure things out at the end, but he's got a hill to climb.
It may not be enough.
Yeah, he's got a hill to climb. And what about the other one?
Sark in Texas. How much longer does he have now? Arch Manning coming in, that's a big deal. We have Quinn Ewers.
Right. I mean, they have two. See, he has what Dabo needs.
Correct.
Could he
get one of them?
Could he get one of them from Sark? Because one of those guys is going to go.
Correct.
Okay. And if Dabo would open up his slide to the transfers, perhaps that's to me exactly what he needs. But yeah, Sark has two quarterbacks. I think you actually asked a good question that normally I would laugh about, but I do think. Well,
there's a statement.
I do because it's like it seems too early to suggest that Sark is on any type of hot seat.
But he's always on the hot seat.
But here's the deal. You're right. This is Texas. They go whatever they went last year, 7-5. I mean, it was a totally unmemorable season.
Yeah.
Because again, do you remember anything after they almost beat Alabama?
No,
I don't. So
that was their pinnacle.
Correct. And listen, I think he's a good coach. I think they have a good offense. They certainly have the quarterbacks. I don't know how they're going to be defensively.
Sure.
They're in a league though this year. They're still in the Big 12. One more year. Listen, they can win that league. Oklahoma's down.
Yes.
Okay.
They certainly could.
If he goes 7-5 again or something like that, there's going to be chatter.
Well,
I think
because
you're right.
then they enter the SEC play after this year. And do you want to go in limping?
No, it doesn't get any easier.
No, it certainly doesn't.
So they've got a hill to climb too. And then here comes another one of your favorites.
Yeah, Notre Dame. And I have to say I'm a little down on Notre Dame because I was researching this yesterday too. I had heard nothing about their OC candidacy because obviously Tommy Rees taken to Mr. Nick Saban to be brought up now in his career. So he'll probably take off and go somewhere soon. But Notre Dame was on a national search for offensive coordinator. They had a guy from Utah, their OC, come in. They had a couple other big names, and they couldn't get any of them, and instead settled on their tight end coach. They bumped up their tight end coach, which I think has to be a little disappointing.
And did you, in doing that research, did you hear the story where Marcus Freeman, I think he was courting an OC, and he took him to the basketball game or something, and everybody they saw them together, and they assumed that he was going to be the OC.
I didn't see this.
And then the guy turned him down, and there were some rumors that he couldn't that Notre Dame didn't want to pay the buyout. I'm trying to remember who that was that he had. That he had at the basketball game. But anyway, Shiner's going to look that up for us. But the point is, it was a bad look. And then Marcus Freeman was asked about it, and he basically said, listen, I'm going to show off the university. This is a job interview. Because I think the question was, why would you take somebody out in public like that if it's
not a done deal?
If it's not a done deal. And Marcus Freeman said, well, that's just how I do things. I want to show off the best parts of a university. I thought his answer was fine. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it was a little embarrassing for Notre Dame.
100% if that happens.
Yeah, they couldn't reel in the big fish.
How do you think it would feel if James Franklin would have taken Mike Yursich to a BJC game?
Right.
And it wasn't a done deal. People would be clamoring all over the place.
That's what I mean. I think he's smarter than that. I just thought it was a bad look for Notre Dame. Now, by the way, it's possible that they thought it was a done deal.
Right.
But I There were some questions there. I like how Marcus Freeman handled it, but ultimately
They came up short.
they came up short. Not to say that they can't be good.
Well,
Time will tell.
And as a result, Utah gets to keep their OC. They have Cam Rising coming back, so they're sitting at number 13. Don't be surprised if Penn State sees them in
Was
another
that the
bowl
guy?
game.
That was
yes.
that
well,
was
I don't know if it was the guy that they brought in.
No, I think it was. I think that was the guy.
Okay.
I think it was Utah's
Interesting.
OC. And who wouldn't want him?
Well, yeah. I mean, I still just it's Notre Dame. That's what I keep going back to in my head. It's Notre Dame. You gotta go out there and find somebody. You gotta pay them. If you want to win and you want to compete at the highest level, what has James Franklin taught us? You need the money, you need the resources to get these coaches.
Yes, it was Andy Ludwig, right? That's who it was.
Yeah.
And he's Utah's OC, and I'm pretty sure that's who was at the basketball game. And then it didn't work out.
Well,
For some reason, it fell through.
Before we get to the top 10, one quick jab at TCU because I want to get in another one. I think this is where they belong. I truly do. I think, again, a lot of people fell in love with them last year. I think they were overdone a bit. I think they're just outside the top 10, in my opinion.
Oh, no, yeah, no. I think that's fair. Remember, they were unranked last year.
Correct.
But they also had, again, what do you need in college football?
A quarterback,
Bingo.
Mr. Duggan.
See, we can finish each other's sentences. I love it. And there's Washington, too. The Huskies, they've got the right guy on board there, Caleb DeBoer, and they've got something going.
I got to see it again, though.
Oh, yeah, no.
It can't just be a fluke.
No, 100%. But I think they've got a lot of people coming back. No, I don't have a problem with where they're at, but let's see it. Let's see them play a Pac. Let's see them play that Pac-10 schedule,
And
Pac-12
this is just
schedule.
such a nice transition because I think we have the same problem in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Can they repeat? Can they climb the mountain again? Can they climb Rocky Top?
Well, I think they can because I really love Josh Heupel. I think he's a quarterback whisperer. If you can't get a star quarterback, you need a quarterback whisperer. He's that guy. Mm-hmm. And I think he's running a one heck of a program there. I think that Josh Heupel is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the SECs because let me tell you this. I will share with you a tweet that I tweeted yesterday.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Do you agree with me about Josh Heupel?
I'm on the fence, and I'm on the fence only because if they didn't beat Alabama in the last second, does their season look as good, especially with what happened down the stretch?
Well, keep in mind they had, and again, we know how an injury affects
Yes.
a team. The Hendon Hooker did get injured, but my goodness, you're right. The way that they lost to South Carolina, who they should be watched closely this year, too.
Yep. They're on the up and up.
Pat Dooley, who covers the Florida Gators, was on the Paul Feinbaum show, and he said that heading into 2023, Billy Napier has got a plan. And his quote was,
Love to see it.
It may take a little longer than fans want, but he's sticking to the plan. And I wrote, is the plan to struggle to make a bowl game? Now, let me put some context into that quote, because I listened to Pat Dooley's interview, and he said, and I think you'll appreciate this, part of the plan, and this is good context, and I do want to add that to my tweet here and my line of thought. I think Florida's going to struggle this year. Tennessee was down for over a decade, just a mess of an organization and football team. Florida seems to be there now. Part of Billy Napier's plan, apparently there were a lot of bad apples. He came in and he basically said, if you want to come back next year, that's fine. But here are the rules and here are my expectations. And
that actually surprises me under Dan Mullen.
a lot of people, not really. But
I thought he was better than that.
Well, if he was, he would still be there.
Right.
And the fact of the matter was he couldn't recruit, and I do. I mean, he was associated with Urban Meyer. Need I say more? But Billy Napier found a lot of bad apples, and he plucked them from the tree, and that is going to take some time. I think if fans realize that, and I thought that was good for Pat Dooley to mention that, maybe they'll have some patience.
Interesting.
But bringing this home to my point, Tennessee does not have to worry about Florida. They have to worry about Georgia.
And
Alabama.
Yeah, I mean,
well, no,
those
I
are
understand.
the two, and
they
I
play
just-
them every year. My point is,
it's almost like Penn State.
Yeah.
It's almost like Penn State. They're not quite at that level.
No,
They're
no.
trying to get there, and they have two teams that are just staring them in the face that are like, how do I get past them?
However, they did beat Alabama.
Yes.
And they're on the other side of the ledger, at least for one more year. So let's see. But again, I'm fine with them being where they're at. There's Oregon again.
There's Oregon again. Don't know what to make of them.
Let's see.
It's hard to say. It's
Yeah.
hard to say. Bo Nix ended up being a godsend to them.
And he's back.
It didn't look like it was going to be that way early on, but he's back. So that could be very interesting. I think the one that I like the most out of any contenders that could give Alabama and Georgia fits, LSU. I love LSU. I'm a big Brian Kelly guy. They showed me a lot last year. Now, they also lost a game they shouldn't have lost down the stretch, and I can't remember exactly which one it was, but it was a
Jimbo.
Oh, that's right. It was Texas A&M.
Embarrassing.
So that can't happen. But
Correct.
Brian Kelly has a way of staying very, very relevant. Keep an eye out for them.
I think well said. USC, to me, they're a one-trick pony.
Yes.
Lincoln Riley has never had a defense. He'll win 10 or 11 games. The media will fall in love with him, and I'll be sitting here saying the same thing. Prove it.
Well, and Caleb Williams is awesome. I mean, he is one of the best quarterback prospects.
Lincoln Riley's had a lot of good quarterbacks.
Yes.
What he has never had is a defense, and I think Alex Grinch is coming back. Great. Again,
Perfect.
7 is where you start.
Yep.
7 is where you'll end. Penn State finds themselves just behind Alabama, and again, I think the ranking is appropriate here. Not only do we won't dwell on them, we've talked about them a lot the past few weeks, but not only do they have a lot of returning stars, but they actually have the quarterback prospect.
From what we can tell, they do. The games have to be played. But I think the difference with Penn State is, you just mentioned the issue with USC. USC has the quarterback. They don't have the defense. Penn State has a very good defense. Could even be better next year, depending, who comes back, who actually fills out the starting roles. I love what Manny Diaz is doing. I think he's going to take the Big Ten by storm this year, even if there's some growing pains with Mr. Drew Aller.
Yeah, no, and it's a good situation. Alabama, of course, is Alabama. They're in the 5 spot. They have some questions to answer just about everywhere: quarterback, defense, new coordinators, and then how about this?
Yeah, I don't agree with this one.
Florida State. Well, listen, Mike Norvell.
I like
a lot
what
of
he's
people
doing.
coming back, but boy, they're going to have
that's high praise to go over Bama.
That is, and quite frankly, I think it's high praise to put them over Penn State.
Yeah.
Now this is just Mark Schlabach.
Yes. Yep.
There are others that have Penn State, I think, a little higher, but they have. This is going to be settled quickly. Remember, they welcome LSU opening
Yes.
weekend.
So you'll learn a lot. Now, I think the top 3 are gimmies. You could put Ohio State and Michigan flip-flopping positions, but Georgia, we'll talk about why they should be very relevant here in a second. But Ohio State and Michigan, again, comes down to a few games a year for those two teams.
And as James Franklin said, for Penn State, you're in the top 5, top 6 of the country, and you're still 3rd in your own division.
Correct.
And that is a problem.
Correct.
So
now, here's a question for you. Out of these teams, I can already see a few. If there were a top 12 playoff, right now it would end at TCU. You would include Washington, Tennessee, Oregon, LSU, USC, Florida State. A lot of teams that don't get the action. Florida State, one of the biggest teams to benefit from the 12 this year?
Well, first of all, I think the 12-team playoff is going to probably end up saving college football, because if you look at the teams on this fake 25 list for next year, these are all nationally relevant teams
Yes.
from different corners of the
Yes.
country. Right? People got tired of watching Alabama and Clemson. Unless you're us and you're just a junkie of the sport.
But even I got tired of it.
Well,
I mean,
sure.
I've been clamoring for it for years.
People
to
are
change.
waning. The interest is waning, and the NFL is just blowing up. And college football should be the second most popular sport, and it is, but it could be doing a lot more to help itself.
Right.
Think about this. Now, the seeding is not exactly like this, because it's conference winners. You have
Right.
to win your conference. But you'd get an Alabama, a 5 seed. First of all, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State would be on byes. You'd have Alabama playing TCU. Now, by the way, to those that would say TCU didn't belong, there's your game.
Right.
Alabama blows
Make it
them
happen.
up. And guess what? If they beat Alabama in the first round, nobody can question
Right.
whether
Then
they
you
belong.
know. Then you know.
That's a game. Then you have Washington playing Penn State. Boy, we've seen that before.
We have seen that before.
And that would be a fun game. How about USC, Tennessee,
That'd be fun.
and then LSU and Oregon? And these games are 2 key words here: on campus.
Right. And that would be the fun part. And, people want a stronger schedule. This is the way to make a stronger schedule into a championship season.
I think any of those matchups would be fun. And okay, can you pull a double box? Pull us up on camera and leave that graphic up. Can we do that?
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Because you asked me about Florida State, and yes, I think Florida State could benefit from the 12-team
Because they're not Clemson. And that's the thing. They're not their top program in the conference.
You know who else is a team I think could really benefit from the 12th? Utah.
Utah's
They're
another.
they're always right
They're
there.
razor thin,
Yep.
razor thin margins.
If you get them on a good year, Kansas State
Yes.
seems to always be
Yes.
there, right? A team like North Carolina,
Yes.
fringy, but they made the championship game this year in the ACC.
Here's one for you: Texas.
Oh yeah,
Texas. I mean, if Texas,
now they
could
can't
make
go 7-5.
No, but a playoff run would probably save Sark at this point.
And I think ultimately, and I've heard national pundits say this too, Penn State, probably the team that this benefits the most. They are consistently in the top 10. The outside looking in at the end of the year, they would have been in just about every 12-team playoff James Franklin
And that's
has been a part of.
Phenomenal.
And it changes the conversation. Plus, it keeps a very large fan base, any of those, by the way, Texas, Penn State, Florida State, involved longer.
That's right.
And I think that is what you want. Now, here's a fun game. I asked you to do a little research this week. And,
This is
and
fun.
You obliged, and not only obliged, you thrived in this because we wanted to talk about teams that are going to have the toughest schedule and the easiest schedule next year when we look at the strength of schedule of their opponents. So, Dan, what's first here?
All right, so this is from James Park at Fans Nation, and we have first the hardest schedule. Mr. Beamer, South Carolina, which I think is a hard pill to swallow because they're kind of on the up and up.
Do we have their schedule, or do you want me to look it up?
You could look it up.
Actually, let's have Mr. Shiner look it up, and then he can read it off to us. I think that's the perfect thing to do here because in order to get a sense of what it's like, we want to hear it. Now, some other names on this list.
Michigan State, West Virginia, Ole Miss, and Missouri. And I find the West Virginia thing interesting because who does Penn State have to play? Game one.
Yeah, so they're coming in on the road to a top 10 team.
Right.
That makes sense that they're on that list.
Yes, and Michigan State, too, I believe, has a strong out-of-conference schedule, which big year coming up.
Well, big year, and they have to play 3 top 10 teams right now. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State.
Correct.
So that's a very tough schedule.
Right. And then if you have a strong out-of-conference on top of it,
Yes.
that's when it adds up. And then Ole Miss and Missouri, and again, Lane Kiffin, what do you got?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a big year for that
Well,
program.
and if you're Ole Miss, you've got to play LSU, you've got to play Bama. Think about some of those West teams. You don't know what Auburn's going to be like with Hugh Freeze. Missouri's in the East. They have to play
Correct.
Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina.
Yeah, and they're
So-
kind of – are they the Indiana of the SEC?
Right now they are. The recruiting's a little bit better, but, I mean, my goodness, Eli Drinkwitz, fun guy, but he's going to have to make a move this year. Okay, what is the South Carolina schedule that is ranked the hardest next year?
All right, so this is pretty tough. Okay, they open up September 2nd with UNC. That's
Oh,
a home
wow.
game at South Carolina. Okay.
Okay.
Then you have Furman, the perennial power. Then we go at Georgia,
Wow.
home
Game three.
against Mississippi State, on the road against Tennessee.
Ooh, so stop right here. I just want to point this out. Let's just take this in. You have a top 21 team in North Carolina.
Yep.
Yeah, you get them at home. They go to Georgia, and they
Correct.
go to Tennessee.
Wow.
Correct.
Okay, those are 2 top 10
And that's
teams.
in the first 5 weeks.
And that's in the first on the road. Okay, I'm starting to understand. This is why we needed to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
All right, so then Florida at home. Okay. Then you go away to Missouri.
Okay. That's a favorable 2-game stretch.
Yeah.
That
Not bad.
could
They
go
can
either way.
recover. They can recover.
Yeah.
Now,
Wow.
this is the real question mark. What's A&M going to look like this year? Texas A&M, that's on the road for them.
Oh, okay. Time out a second. I think it's easy to sit here and say, who cares about A&M? You're right. We don't know. Remember, vroom,
There it goes.
Bobby Petrino is in town, and if you just assume that
they're
they could,
better.
that they're better,
Yeah.
they have to go to Kyle Field, another road game.
You know
Yep.
what?
This road schedule is insane.
I hate to-
Halloween weekend,
I
too,
hate
so
to
you know
admit
the
this.
freaks are out.
yeah.
I forgot all about this. In their top 25, no mention of Texas A&M.
Well, and they
Well,
shouldn't
they didn't
be.
deserve it
They
from
didn't
last
deserve
year.
it, but
But they did
What
play
they're
one
throwing
hard
into the
game.
program,
what? Yeah, and the recruiting,
Yes.
it is remarkable. Great point though. But that's a. I mean, Georgia, Tennessee,
Holy
A&M on the
cow.
road. Okay, we continue.
All right, then they go. I'm sorry, JSU. Is that Jackson State?
I think so.
Yeah.
Jackson State. That's a home game for them. And of course, I just
It's
lost
the
my whole
SEC
thing.
Cupcake Weekend.
Yep.
Always in November.
yes.
The thing to remember, cupcakes.
Let me get back to it. I lost it for.
I do
quick
love a
second
good
here.
frosted cup. What's your favorite type of cupcake?
Ooh.
You like the frosted?
Chocolate peanut butter, I think.
Ooh, I like funfetti. Funfetti's good.
All right. Okay. So then you're home against Vanderbilt.
Okay.
I mean, that's a win.
Well-
Home against Kentucky, which the Will
Kentucky?
Levis less Kentucky.
I don't want to ever play. Mark Stoops is like the Kirk Ferentz.
Yeah.
of that
And then
league.
you kind of luck out. You get Clemson at home for the end of the season.
Yeah, but okay. Just to recap,
That's rough.
you have to open with North Carolina. Think about that. You have to play at Georgia, at Tennessee, at A&M, and then you still have to play Clemson to finish the season.
Yep.
I see it. That's a very tough schedule. Very tough.
I'll quickly give you Mel Tucker's to-do list here. It starts out Central Michigan at Michigan State. Richmond comes into Michigan State, which is an interesting pool. But then it's Washington is game 3.
Yeah, just like last year. And Washington is a top,
Yes.
essentially a top 10 team.
Follow that
Oh, wait,
up.
did they? Where's that?
It's at home.
It's at, so they start 3 games at home.
And they get another one after that. Maryland at home.
Okay.
And Maryland, again, don't sleep on them.
Yeah, they're a bubble
Don't
team.
sleep on them. Iowa.
Excuse me. I'm going to sleep. Wake me up.
Okay.
The Washington is fine. Let's
But
continue.
a tough game like Washington, then to play Maryland.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
well, listen.
They're not the slouches they used to be.
It
Who?
only-
Maryland.
Okay. Sure.
Hey, they made bowl games back-to-back years, I believe. Did they not?
Yeah, and listen. By the way,
I mean, that's good for Maryland.
You can make
You
the
know?
argument they're comparable programs right now because Michigan State was not good last
Correct.
year. Who's after Maryland though?
All right. Then they go to Iowa. That's hard.
At Iowa.
At
Yeah,
Iowa.
Tough.
Always
then they
tough.
go on the road again to Rutgers, which you
Yeah,
just- you
it's
just
on the
don't
road.
know.
Great
Don't
shout
know.
out, chopping that wood.
And then they get the rivalry. They get to see Mr. Khaki Pants at home, though.
Okay.
So they play
have a lot
Michigan
of
at
home games. Wow.
Yes. And then they go to Minnesota. They play Nebraska at home. They finish up with at Ohio State, at Indiana, and hosting the Nittany Lions to end out. I mean, this could be a disaster.
Well, yeah, but again, I don't think we know a lot about Michigan State. It is a tough schedule, but I think South Carolina's ultimately is tougher. Now, who has the easiest schedule?
Yeah,
next
this
season?
is fun. This is pretty fun here, and I love one of these names for many reasons coming up. So the easiest schedule goes to the Beavers of Oregon State, but not
Can
far.
we? Let's see that graphic if you don't mind.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, nope, that's okay.
There we
You're,
go.
you're doing. Dan's working
Yep.
both hands here. We got it.
I thought it was up. Okay, so we have the Beavers of Oregon State,
Yeah.
followed by the man I just mentioned, Mr.
Khaki
Harbaugh.
Pants. Yeah.
So Michigan with the number 2 easy schedule, and this is where it gets scary, folks. Alabama comes in at number 3.
Yeah.
Clemson comes in at number 4. And there's the reigning national champions, number 5 easiest schedule, Georgia.
Are we suggesting here that it's the usual suspects?
It is.
This comes from
It
Fansided
is.
too, right? John
And-
Bueller wrote this. So
Yes. So this is scary to me, and I think this will be yet another reason why we need to change this playoff system because you may not see much of a difference from last year to this year. I mean, insert your TCU of this upcoming season, but I mean, let me just go through Mr. Harbaugh's schedule. I don't have the graphic for that one, but I just want to tell you
Okay.
they play East Carolina at home, they play UNLV at home, then they play Bowling Green at home. I mean,
Yeah.
the first 3 you could sit your starters almost.
It's a snooze fest.
Then Rutgers at home.
Jeez.
Then they go to Nebraska. Their first away game is Nebraska.
Yeah.
At,
Seriously.
at least Nebraska has a coach with a pulse, but I
he's got
don't
a
think
long
he.
way to
I
go.
don't
But
think he has the players.
First year, we'll
Yeah.
see what happens. you know?
I'm with you. I'm with
Okay.
you. I'm not hearing anything that scares me.
Then they go to Minnesota. Then they have Indiana at home. So, I mean, that's through mid-October.
Yeah, wake
Not a
me
single
still
test.
asleep.
Then they play Michigan State, which we
Okay.
don't know much about yet.
No, and I will always. I don't care if Michigan State has you and I playing on their D line. I give them a chance in this game. Mel Tucker knows the hatred there,
Yes.
and
Yes.
they will be
And
up for
the
that
kids,
game.
The kids will be up for that game, especially considering the fight in the tunnel and all the back
my
and
goodness.
forth. I
Big
mean,
brother, little brother action as well. That's always a headbanger.
I
Now-
forgot about the fight in the tunnel.
This is one that I think is sneaky, and it's a look-ahead game because they play at Penn State the week after. They have to bring Purdue into the Big House, and Purdue is the type of team that I think could beat Michigan on a good Saturday.
I don't. Again, ordinarily, comment like that, I'd look at you like you were nuts. I think you're dead on the money. I would agree
They're a
100%.
passing team.
Yep. They have to go on the road the next week to
Yep.
potentially top 10 opponent.
Yes.
Great point.
Then they finish out with your friends at Maryland, Mr. Mike Loxley,
After Penn State.
after Penn State, and then they face, obviously, Ohio State
Yep.
in the capstone game of the year.
There's about 2 or 3 games in there. Otherwise, very easy. But I think, again, I hate to say this, Mr. Kirby Smart has an easier schedule.
Yep.
And I know, but Michigan was
We're going
ranked.
to roll that tape. Here it is.
Michigan was ranked number 2. But look at this schedule for Kirby Smart, okay? Just look at this. Read it off there, Dano.
It's hard not to laugh. UT Martin, Ball State, and then our friends there with Mr. Shane Beamer in South Carolina.
We'll keep an eye on that one, but they are going to Georgia. Georgia spends September at home, right?
That's
Between the
correct.
hedges.
Correct.
Okay.
UAB.
Hey, watch out for UAB,
I
the
know.
Fighting Tread Dilfers.
They
okay?
could be better than
think they're gonna turn
their
around
next
quick.
opponent. They could be better than their next opponent. Who is the coach at Auburn again? Tell me.
Hugh Freeze.
He's got a long way to go. This could be a rough start for Mr. Hugh Freeze at Auburn. Then Kentucky. The back half of the schedule is almost worse.
I know. Yeah. No. Please.
At Vandy.
Yeah.
At Florida. Mizzou.
That's the cocktail party.
Yep. Mizzou, Ole Miss, which again, Ole Miss could be irrelevant by that point.
Yeah.
Tennessee, which
Yeah. They do have to go there.
Well,
That's their game.
yeah, that's
because
their
that'll
game.
be for the division. I think this is easier than Michigan's.
Yeah, I could
I
see
do.
it. I could see. I guess because of
Less
Tennessee.
rivalries.
Yeah, and-
Michigan has to, play little brother and all
Correct.
that.
Yeah, and Ohio State and Penn State. They have to. South Carolina, you can make a case. I'm not going to make that case. They're going to roll over them at home. Okay. At Auburn, if Auburn, if this was maybe 2 years from now and Hugh Freeze's team at a pulse, maybe. I don't think they're there yet. No, wait, I was looking at that.
Oh,
Go back. Sorry. Kentucky, but they get them at home.
They do.
And then at Vanderbilt, at Florida, Missouri. I mean, come on. That is a one-game schedule at Tennessee.
Truly is.
And that is assuming, like you said, Tennessee can keep it up.
And can you call this a rebuilding year for Georgia? Kind of. But by the time they get to Tennessee, I mean, they should be well oiled.
Yeah. All right. Real fast here. Favorite announcing duo.
Well, hold on.
Oh.
Just for the fans out there, we put this together too. Here's Penn State's schedule just for
Okay.
comparison.
I forgot. Yes, read them off.
All right, so we have the Mountaineers coming into Happy Valley, then the Blue Hens of Delaware, which I think is fun. My niece goes to Delaware, so I'm excited about that.
Shout out to Dan's niece.
Yeah, Rayanne, hello out there. At Illinois, which
Could be tricky.
Don't get James Franklin started on the Big Ten schedule, starting on the road.
Yeah, not great, but could be a tricky one. Don't sneeze on it.
Nope, especially with what's coming afterwards. 2
Iowa.
physical games in a row,
Yes.
and so that could be difficult. Again, they should handle their business, but you just never know. Then we round out the first half of the schedule with Northwestern and UMass. So, all things considered, 6-0 is on the table.
100%. Keep an eye on those middle 2 games, and then sleepy Evanston, Illinois, but Pat Fitzgerald's in the basement. Can he climb out of it?
Yeah, I think they're in a world of hurt. So then comes the big boys. We have Ohio State, and I can't stand when this happens. You get another sneaky opponent after a big game, Indiana, followed by going down to Maryland.
Yeah. Yep.
Snake pit in full effect.
But we've played well there.
We
we
have.
have.
We-
55-0, I think it was.
We usually
Yeah.
blow the doors off early, and hopefully that's the case.
Correct. And then, of course, Michigan coming in November, Rutgers, and at Michigan State. So the back half's a little tougher, but I would say, just because, again, you don't know exactly how this is
Right.
going to pan out, there's a few games on there that would make me nervous. At Illinois and Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, the usual suspects.
But again, what I always feared when I was a student there, I felt like they always matched up the big games one after the other. It's not happening this
It
time.
is a little more spread out, which is at least somewhat fair. But I'm with James Franklin. Can we start the Big Ten schedule at home next year?
Especially when
That'd
you're
be
a
nice.
Big Ten
Let-
power.
Yeah, let's fix that.
And it's
Okay.
always these tricky games on
Yeah,
the
they're-
road.
yeah.
It's not like,
Sneaky
can we not
teams.
get Rutgers in the first 3 games of the season here?
I would-
Well,
I would take that.
Go
I would
to
take that.
Indiana. I mean,
Yeah.
can we get a? I don't even know. I mean, Wisconsin obviously is down right now. I would take them on the road, honestly.
Yeah, or even Minnesota. I know we lost there, but
Right.
I think we can handle it. Okay, quick. Let's wrap it up. If you're watching college football on a Saturday, whose melodic tones do you want in the booth that just makes it seem like a big game? Let's start with Mr. Shiner.
Okay, I mean, this is sort of going chalk, but
And by the way, it doesn't have to be current. Doesn't have to be current.
I take Herb Street and Fowler. I think they're the best in the biz right now. I'll tell you who I don't want to hear: Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt. I'm
Bingo.
just going to leave that a go.
Ding, ding, ding.
Well, I
Big noon
don't.
kickoff. hurts my brain.
Yeah, it hurts my
You know,
brain too.
my kids really don't like it when they do something bad and I scream at them. They don't like it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't like to be screamed at for 3 hours when I'm watching
Let
a
alone
college
just a
football game.
4-yard gain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Anyway,
thanks.
So I mean, that's a little chalk, but that's who I'm going.
No,
I
I
mean,
mean-
you can't leave off Musburger and Keith
Jackson.
Jackson. I mean,
Sure.
obviously all the well Nellies and all those catchphrases out there. But,
Classic.
Yep.
I'm going to go with a radio booth.
Uh-oh.
Steve Jones and Mr. Ham.
They are the sound of Saturday, especially if I'm in my car.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm out doing errands on a non-contentious game, I love hearing their tidbits. I love usually they have a decent sideline reporter, usually a former player. I would much rather listen to their broadcasts most days than the people on TV, to be perfectly frank.
I think that's a good choice. I'm going to go with Sean McDonough and Todd Blackledge. I just think now
I like them.
they're not together anymore.
No,
No,
that's a shame.
unfortunately.
Todd is moving over to NBC to do their Big Ten Saturday night, but I like McDonough's calls. I think he's smooth. He gets excited at the right times, and Blackledge has a great analysis. I mean, I think him and Kirk Herbstreit, they're the 1A and 1B of the sport in terms of breaking down the film and doing it live, and I think Blackledge is terrific. So that would be my choice, and I'm with you 100%. Actually, I do like Clatter. Joey Klatt, but I just
Gus is too
Gus
much.
is just
It's
too
too
over
much.
the top.
It's like
too
he's never
much.
seen a football game before.
yeah, and to some extent, listen, I'm glad you're excited. I don't want the Al Michaels Tony Dungy booth from
Yeah.
the playoff. You can't go that way either.
The no energy.
Right, but
will say,
sometimes it's too much.
I wish that Tirico was doing more
Yes.
games other than just Notre
Yeah,
Dame.
and I
you
like
know,
him
I
on
miss
Notre Dame
him
games.
being on the ESPN games and stuff, but
Yeah.
he does a great job. I just
Well, he's
you
not
know.
doing Notre Dame.
He's not doing it Notre Dame
no,
anymore.
No.
Uh,
That's Jack Collinsworth.
Yes.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
It's all been switched
Moved
up again.
off.
I was going to say, is there any other new pairings to be aware of? You
not-
follow this pretty closely.
Yeah, not that we know of yet. Although I do like Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge
Yes,
will be on
yes.
NBC prime time, and of course Brad Nessler, Gary Danielson will do some Big Ten games this year too.
I do love CBS's booth.
I like
on
their
college.
presentation.
Yeah.
I love Vernon, Gary. I know they take some hate from the SEC fans. That's okay. We'll take them because I do love Ness.
Yeah, I think they're better than. I like Herbie. I'm not a big Fowler person, to be honest.
I actually 100% with you. I don't mind him. He's grown on me, but I don't.
There's too much excitement there sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think he does the majesty of college football voice, and it's a little grating at times. But he has grown on me over the years.
He has, and as a Penn State fan, we won't hear him as much moving forward.
All right. I have to duck out, actually.
Yes, you
I am,
do.
I am up against my time. You guys close it out. I thank you both for this. What a fun discussion. We're going to do it again next week. We're going to try to have some more guests on, and I will see you both a little bit later.
Yep, go ahead. Go do the weather gig. So
Will do.
We'll quickly discuss where you can find us here, weatherwagers@gmail.com. Mr. Shiner, where can you find us on podcast platforms?
Pretty much all of them, I believe.
Yeah, that is true.
Spotify, Apple, Anchor FM. Am I missing any?
I think you hit the big ones
All
there,
right,
and
good.
Apple tends to be the one. So hopefully you've already signed up. You can subscribe, get some of those notifications as the latest episode gets posted. Usually each Wednesday afternoon. Sometimes it pushes into the evening. As always, if you have any ideas, we'd love to hear from you. At meteorologist Brett Thacker on Facebook, at meteorologist Dan Tomaso on Facebook, Brett Thack, ABC27 on Twitter and Instagram, Doppler Dan, Twitter and Instagram. And hey, Shiner, what do you got out there on the socials?
You can see me at Shinetastic17
All
on
right.
all media platforms.
So that'll do for this week, and I believe next week we're going to continue efforting some guests, possibly getting some Eagles talk in the show as well. But for the time being, we are going to send it out. Mr. Shiner, give a wave. Have a great week, everybody. My head's cut off.
Well.